director of Street UK Limited. This project is working with young people at risk of violent offending. He's also director of Diversity Project Limited, a consultancy that offers research, training, and policy development, as well as support in relation to equality, diversity, human rights, and personal empowerment. He's a professional counselor with more than 20 years of experience in field of mental health issues. His prior work experience is a researcher and a lecturer for 6 years in universities, Leeds and Bradford universities, and specializing in race and public policy. He previously worked at Commission for Race Equality. He was the head of race policy for the Welsh Assembly government. He was a board member on Joseph Rowntree's charitable trust, serving on their racial justice committee. That's what I have on my list. There are many other things you'll know later. So please welcome Mr. Alyas Karmani.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for your kind introduction, and thank you also. I'm really honored to be here. This is my first time in South Korea, and this is a learning experience for me. So I'm learning from you, and I hope I can impart something useful to you and learn from you as well. So this is a two-way process, really. As you mentioned, the main focus of my work at the moment and for a long time has been working with young people. And to me, this is what I always wanted to do. I always wanted to work with young people because, I believe that young people are the most important people that I work with. I do a lot of work, you can see, at the senior government level. One of the things I forgot to mention, I'm also a politician back in the UK. So I'm a councillor in the local government there. So I play many different roles. But, what I always say is that the most important work that I do, and the work that I find most valuable, and that has the most impact, is working with the most important people in society. To me, young people are the most important people in society. They are the most valuable asset in society, because they are the future. If you are someone who's concerned about a better world in the future, a more harmonious world, a just world, a fair world, a world where people can coexist together in harmony. We want to create that world, and I'm sure everyone here recognizes that that is something which is very important, something which is so important to work towards. If we want to create a positive future reality, then you need to work with the people who are going to be part of that reality. I remember an interesting scholar once, and this is from times gone by, in his gathering, in his lectures, in his talks, there would be older students, older, mature students, but he'd also allow children to come along. And the children, being children, would mess around in the lesson. They'd run around. And so the students, the older students would say, to their teacher, oh teacher, oh professor, why is it that you've got these children running around here? Causing so much disruption. And he replied, how long will you live and how long will they live? Okay, so that's what he said. How long will you live and how long will they live? Obviously as a child and young person, you've got 40, 50, 60 productive years ahead of you. Compared to an older person, obviously, who's going to have less years. So that's, if you are a person who's concerned about the future, you invest, I believe, in the most important asset which will define that future. I often ask, and my lectures, I like to make my lectures very interactive, and I can't find the PC button anyway, so I don't know how to move on to the next slide. Someone can come and can show me how to do it. But I like to keep my lectures very interactive anyway. I know this may not be the style that you're used to, but I will ask questions to you, and I expect you to ask questions of me as well. Don't just take everything that I'm saying to you. If I've introduced the concept to you, that the most important people in society are young people. And that's why my concern is to be working with young people. And what I am most concerned about, the whole concept around youth empowerment is that you have to do what I call develop the complete human being. Develop a person holistically. That means that every aspect of their being needs to be developed and in balance. If you don't, then you have an individual who is imbalanced in their life. And I'll show you the frameworks. When an individual is imbalanced, this does lead to social, emotional, personal problems, but also societal problems as well. If I throw out a question to you while we figure this out, what is the most important asset?
I think it's the technology.
Okay, technology. Good.
Yeah.
All right. And obviously, you know, your technological development and advancement here is amazing. You know, really, one of the things I found coming from England to here, that things in England we would never apply technology to, you have applied technology to them here. Okay? So rather than just open the door with a handle, you have a button to press it and it opens. So I find that's interesting. That's interesting. So technology. One more, let's have one more point. Safety, security. Yeah, it's a very important asset. Without security, then people feel unstable. You're right, that's it. So all these are, I think, important assets, as people have mentioned. You know, people talk about technology, people talk about resources, people talk about intellectuals, people talk about security, people talk about government. All of these are really important assets. But I always believe, my ethos, and I think this is obviously coming from the social science background as well, I believe people come first. Not technology comes first, not resources come first, people come first. And therefore, when you're developing a person, the most critical thing in the development of that person is developing them completely. And the development of your emotional self. We are social beings, and we are emotional beings. And we live in societies together, and we interact with each other. So these are really critical issues. I believe, if anything, that these are probably the biggest issues that we face in humanity at the moment. They're not just, the biggest issues are not technological issues, or even environmental. The biggest issues in the world are human issues. I don't know, would you agree with me, anyone? What do you think? What are the biggest global issues that are affecting us at the moment? Anyone? The economy, global recession. No? Okay, disagree. Okay, anyone else? Morality, ideology, ideas. Yes. Anything else? Sir? Okay, so this is an interesting one. Okay, so this is the biggest problem. Muslims and non-Muslims. Polarization. Us versus them. Okay, anyone else? Okay. Now, again, you know, I think all of those ideas are very valid ideas. I think you're right. I think the biggest issues in the world are how we see each other. And how we understand people who are different from ourselves. These are the biggest issues in the world. Because what this does is it creates a barrier. And that barrier can sometimes lead to conflict. What I've learned in my very short stint in life is that most conflict is not real conflict. It's perceived conflict. It's something you see in your mind. Do you know what's interesting with me? I travel around the world, and I have a certain appearance. When I go through an airport, certain people always take me to the side, even here when I came into Seoul, okay? I put my British passport down, and they say, can you come to the side? Okay, they come to the side. And I thought, oh, again they want to question me. It was just, no, they just checked my passport, and that was it, on my way. So it's about perception, how you are seen. And especially, you know, we have to ask ourselves the question, when I meet someone who is different from myself, when I come into a culture which is different from the culture that I'm used to, a society which is organized in a different way, There's three things. Do I try to understand it from within, from learning, from inquiring, from my research, from asking? So I'm what I call objective. Do I have prejudice? I already have my view already. All Muslims are terrorists. I have that in my mind. It's my paradigm. And I'm not going to change my paradigm. So therefore, everyone who looks like a Muslim, therefore, I believe all Muslims are terrorists. So I have a prejudice. So listen, are you trying to understand? Are you prejudging? Or, you know, are you going to develop that relationship? So this is why. I believe it's a massive issue. Polarization, and it's not new. Before we had this polarization, we had other types of polarization, capitalism versus communism, East versus West. In fact, I believe human beings will hate each other over any reason. In the next 50 years, there will be a new hate, and there will be new haters. And that's why these big social questions and emotions and managing emotions are so important. And I believe that an individual is really successful when they have everything in balance in this particular way. Interestingly, again, when we look at success, each society and culture defines success in different ways. A certain culture will define it purely in materialistic terms. Wealth, status, power, acquisition of material items equals success. Even though the person is, someone said, morally bankrupt. Morally, their behavior is unjust, unethical, and unfair. But they're materially successful. And that society will say this is success. Is it success? This is another question. And in other societies, the concept of success is seen in more holistic terms, in terms of qualities, in terms of values, in terms of whether that person has really been transformed. So this is, and I'm going to give you some framework, some practical stuff in these lectures, which are going to really give you something I think that you can work with in your own life to look at your balance. What I find also interesting is that there's a big difference between Western ideology and Eastern ideology, generally. I'm interesting. I'm born in the West. I'm born in England, although my parents originally they came from Pakistan. But I've lived all my life more or less in Europe, so I'm more or less a Western thinker than an Eastern thinker. But it's interesting. Western society tends to be very materialistic, and has taken out sometimes the concept of the soul or spirituality or big questions. It doesn't talk about them so much. Whereas Eastern ideologies generally are holistic ideologies. They recognize that the individual has a relationship to the whole. It's a two-way relationship. And also, they also recognize the importance of developing the complete self and about social responsibility. So it's interesting that, that is the ideology of, I think, generally Eastern ideologies have this aspect to them. It's interesting with industrialization, with the development of technology and the changing of society, maybe those Eastern societies are losing their values. As a result of that, they have lost what it means to be truly human in the whole sense of it. So these are some of the things I hope to explore with you. I normally prefer to have because I like to go back and forth between slides. So let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, let's kick off. Okay, like I said, I always like to kick off with this as well. You are all unique. You are all important. You are special, and success is waiting